Hello and welcome. Today we'll be talking about a topic that has to do with our lives, our everyday lives, and that is, are we living in the material world or the spiritual world? Is our goal to get out of here and go to some heaven or the light or some other place, maybe some call it the spiritual world, or is our goal to be in this world and be productive and make money and survive and all of that? It's a hotly contested debate. A lot of people talk about it. But one thing I want to point out, there are some ground realities, and those are something unavoidable. We will all face suffering. We will experience dualities such as happiness and distress. We will experience ups and downs in life, hunger and thirst. We will experience old age and disease. We will experience death. We will experience many things in our struggle to be in this world. Everything from a traffic jam to conflict at work or at home, in our relationships. We will experience many problems, and much of our life will be spent solving those problems, trying to deal with them or reacting to them. A few cases we will learn from them. But the main problem we need to look at is, why are there problems in the first place? And why is there this yearning within us to have a solution? Why can't we just be okay with problems? So what if there's a problem? So what? Right? That's not something we can seem to handle. Our impulse, our natural impulse, is to find solutions. Our natural impulse is to find what we're looking for. So if you're alone, you want to find a partner. If you're with a partner, maybe you want to be alone. If you have a job, then you may want to get a different job. And if you don't have a job, then your goal is to find a job. We're constantly looking for the next best thing. And this applies in our technology as well, where they're constantly upgrading to give us newer and newer things so that we can constantly keep purchasing them and keep on in the rat race of acquiring them. We're all guilty of that, no less than anyone else. But the fact of the matter is, why? Why do we seek something other than what we have? And is there a solution? Now, all the scriptures of the world tell us that there is another world. They tell us in many, many different ways, but they tell us of the same thing. Whether you're telling us about a heaven, whether you think it's up in the clouds, or whether you think it's in some other place, whether you think it's the light that's far, far away, whether you think it's a spiritual world where people live with spiritual forms and enjoy pastimes with God. Whatever your version might be, the fact of the matter is, this is the alternative. But what about this world? Why does it exist, and why are we here? Is this a punishment? Are we here to suffer? Is there a vindictive God out there who likes to enjoys watching us suffer? Or maybe who's wanting to punish us because we were bad, maybe we're not good enough, maybe we need to prove ourselves worthy. These are some of the myths that we would like to dismantle. And to start with, I want to tell you something very important. And that is that the world we seek is right here. It's also out there, but it's also right here. There is nothing except spirit everywhere. The spiritual world exists everywhere. Okay? Hidden behind matter is energy. That energy is spirit, is spiritual. And if you learn to connect with the energy hidden behind matter, you will experience as if you are experiencing heaven on earth. This is very possible. The same exists in our interaction with other people. You may perceive them for their body. You may experience them for their mind and the words they say and the things they do. But if you look beyond that, to the deeper essence of the person, you will find something else, the soul. That part of them that is no different than you are, and that is no different than anyone else. From the saint to the sinner, we're all the same, in essence, spiritually speaking. And so therein again, you will find spirit. And in that spirit, you will find yourself loving everyone. And you will find yourself happy with all the differences that we all have. You will no longer suffer. All this is true. And then, of course, there are the places of worship, your church, temple, mosque, wherever it is you worship. There too you will find peace. But the idea is, if you only look for it in that one place, if you think it is only out there or it is only in that place of worship, then you're making a huge mistake. According to me, according to the Vedas, and according to the most enlightened beings that I've met, and in my own experience as well. We can find the spiritual world and God everywhere, in everyone. That is the evidence. The evidence for the existence of God is to be found everywhere. The evidence for heaven or the light or whatever you want to call it is everywhere. It's all around us. We have the capacity to unlock this energy from within matter, from within each other, simply by slowing down, by getting out of our mind, by getting into a practice of meditation, by practicing something that allows us to bypass the mind and enter into spirit. It's a different world. It's a different dimension. And you cannot get to it by a rocket or a car or any other mechanical device. It requires a specific process. That process we call yoga. That process that connects us with the divine. The divine that is present everywhere, in everyone, and yet exists separate from this material world. Material world is simply a covering in the spirit, in this world of spirit. It is a dress. If you want to find the spiritual world right here and now, it's important to look beyond the dress, beyond the costume. Not only of the human being, but of nature and of the entire creation. You're here and you can do it. And in doing it, you will cultivate the qualities that you need to enter into that spiritual world out there. But if you stay with the same anarthas, as we call them, the same impurities that don't allow you to see spirit in this world, then those will keep you in this world. Until you can find God here, you will not find God anywhere out there. Anyway, agree or disagree, that's up to you. But today we're going to read from the Bhagavatam. We are stepping into Canto number 5. We've come a long way. The Bhagavatam is a very extensive study of spirituality. And in this study of spirituality, which was spoken over a period of 7 days by the great sage Sukadev to the king Parikshit, who was to die in 7 days, and who chose to spend those last 7 days in hearing about that knowledge, that wisdom, that truth that would liberate him from the cycle of birth and death and bring him back to the spiritual world. So that's what you're listening to here now. And if you've started it from here, please be sure to go to the beginning, Canto 1, Chapter 1, and start from there. But hey, wherever you touch it, nectar will always be like nectar and will always be sweet. What you're going to hear will sound a little different than many things you're used to hearing, but it takes a little while and you'll get used to it. So let's begin with the 5th canto. So we've been hearing about this king called Maharaj Priyavrata. And Maharaj Priyavrata, we heard a lot about him in the earlier canto. Today we've got a question. You see, when King Priyavrata was instructed by the great sage Narad he continued ruling the earth. He didn't become renounced. He didn't give up his kingdom. He didn't do what a lot of other people in the Vedic era would do, which is that they would, upon becoming enlightened, upon becoming awakened, they would walk away from everything and they would enter into the forest, go into deep meditation, finally become self-realized, and ultimately leave their body and go into the spiritual world. This process we've seen again and again in the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam is a history of great personalities that lived on this earth. That's why very often we're talking about kings, we're talking about sages, we're talking about all kinds of enlightened beings and their journey. And the reason we talk about them, and the Bhagavatam tells us about them rather, is because it wants to give us the inspiration of what is possible. That if they could do it, we can do it too. And so that's the idea of sharing with us all of these narratives. Between the first canto and the 9th canto, we'll come across all these different stories, as well as the different incarnations of the divine or of God or Vishnu. We will come across his incarnations. And then in the 10th canto, we'll go to the ultimate form of the divine, Krishna. We'll come across his Leela. At that point, we're not going to be dealing with kings or anything else. We're going to deal with ultimate sweetness, ultimate pastimes, ultimate beauty. That's what we'll be dealing with there. But we've got a little ways to go. All right, so King Priyavrata had been instructed by Narad and decided to continue in his family life, continue ruling the earth and enjoying material possessions. And so now the King Parikshit, who I told you about earlier, was listening from the sage Sukadev, is asking, why did the king, who was now self-realized devotee, remain in household life, which is the root cause of bondage to karma, and this defeats the mission of human life? How is it possible for him to be attached to family and home and yet achieve the topmost infallible perfection of life? You see, our attachment keeps us in the world. The fact that we're attached to our family, to our home, to our possessions, to our pets, to our achievements, keeps us bound into this world. So the obvious solution sounds like we should do the opposite, give up everything. And yes, that's true, that is a path. The path of renunciation, the path of the sannyasi, the mendicant, the monk. Yes, they give up everything. But if everything has not left your heart, then wherever you go, you will start now acquiring things. If you go to a monastery, then you will try to be the head of that monastery. You will try to be in charge. You will try to control. You will try to dominate. You will try to, do whatever it is to make it yours. The same attachments will arise. The same anarthas or imperfections will show up. So the idea is not that we just give up the world, but rather that we purify ourselves while we are in the world, while we are in our families and in our homes. And having done that, when we are completely detached from all of it, if and when that point arises, then we consider renunciation. But Narad is going to point out something else now, or rather Shukdev is going to point out something else now. He says, one who is attached to the nectarian honey of the Lord's lotus feet. What does this mean? What it's trying to tell you is that hearing about God, hearing about Krishna, hearing about God in any way is like honey, nectarian honey. He's trying to make an example here. So one who is attached to the nectarian honey of the Lord's lotus feet and whose mind is always absorbed in his glories. So his glories can be about him, it can be about his devotees. It can be about those who love him. In fact, Krishna says that those who love my devotees actually love me. And those who love me but do not love my devotees do not love me. There was an old saying, love me, love my dog. Which is to say that if you go to somebody, let's say a wealthy person out in the middle of the street walking their dog, and you hate their dog, but you say, I want to be friends with you. They won't want to be friends with you. If you love me, you love my dog too. Likewise, if somebody gets married to someone who already has kids, well then, if you're going to accept this person in your life, you need to accept their kids too. But if you don't, then you're going to create havoc there. So, in the same way, the Bhagavatam is narrating to you different stories of different personalities, devotees of God, and is showing you through their lives how to love God and how to worship Him and how to become devoted to Him. So one whose mind is always absorbed in His glories may sometimes be checked by some impediment, but he still never gives up the exalted position he has acquired. Now, this is a very odd statement, but to understand it deeply, I'm going to refer to what Prabhupada says in his purport in the Bhagavatam. He says, in this verse, the word Shivatmam means that the devotional path or Krishna consciousness is so auspicious that it is eternal. It cannot be destroyed under any circumstances, meaning the advancement you make in your spiritual life cannot be destroyed at any time. Even if you stray, even if you give it up, even if you reject, once you come to God with a sincere heart, once you surrender to God, then even if you are led astray, even if you give up, even if you do the most terrible deeds, you are to be considered saintly. And in time, God will bring you back on track. Krishna says the same in the Bhagavad Gita as well, that even if a person who is rightly resolved towards me, one who has surrendered to me, one who is my devotee, if he does even the most abominable act, he is to be considered saintly. So be very careful, because the biggest impediment, the only thing that can destroy your spiritual life is called Vaishnav Aparadh. To be envious of, to be critical of, to be judgmental of the devotees of God. Anyone who is sincerely devoted to God, whether it is through one religion or another, it does not matter. We have to be very careful of not judging them ever. Because to judge them is to judge God. God will accept the judgment you have towards Him. No problem. You can hate God. You can despise Him. You can say He doesn't exist. I'm not going to take any offense. But He will take offense if you criticize His devotees. That is referred to by Chaitanya as the mad elephant offense. Just like a mad elephant, sometimes that happens to elephants, they go kind of crazy. And then there'll be a whole field of sugarcane or whatever else it might be, and they'll just destroy it. They'll just go on a rampage through that. So it can be very destructive. On the other hand, let's take a look at the story of Bilva Mangal Thakur. Bilva Mangal was a very advanced devotee in his previous life. He had developed a great love for God. But due to an offense that he committed, and it's a longer story to go into that, what he did in that past life, that was the offense, but it caused him to take birth again. And in this next birth, he became very debauched. And he was very much about enjoying his senses as much as possible. And so he was a regular at many brothels. And finally he found this one woman, Chintamani, who he became crazy about. So crazy about that he would go to see her regularly. She was his obsession. She was his everything. One day it was raining heavily, very heavily. But Bilva had to go and see her. Now, to get to her, he had to cross the river. The boatman wasn't there, so he decided to swim. On the way, he thought he came across a log. He got on that log and started to keep going. Turns out that that log was a crocodile. Don't know how he made it out of that, but he continued and managed to make it to the bank. When he got there, to climb up to her window, because she was on the first floor or something like that, to get there he had to climb up, and on the way there was a snake, and he was holding the snake to try to help him get up. He did all kinds of things to try to get to her. He knocked on the window, and when she came to the window, she said, "Oh my God, Bilva, you're here. It's raining so heavily. Why did you come? If you would only put as much devotion, as much attention, as much love into what you give to me, if you would give this to God, you would become an enlightened being." Bilva heard her, and he changed his life. She became, for him, his guru, the person who showed him the way. He left everything behind and went away to Vrindavan. And there he found Krishna, and he found the ultimate love of his life. Again, after his past life, he now resumed in this life. Having gone through all kinds of darkness, he finally found himself back with the love of his life, Sri Krishna. And he went on to write books, he went on to share his story, and went on to become a very highly evolved being. So that was the story of Bilva Mangal. And that is the story for all of us. All of us have been on this path. You wouldn't be here otherwise. What you're hearing now in the Bhagavatam is some of the most highly evolved spiritual katha, or pastimes, or stories, or knowledge, or wisdom that has ever been written. I'm not just making a claim. I've researched this from all different scriptures of the world, and I can tell you this, it is some of the most highly evolved material that there is. I actually simplify it quite a bit to present it to you here, but I want you to know that there is so much to this, so much, that you can learn from. And if you begin to apply even a little bit of it in your life, it will transform you entirely from the inside out. All right, let's get back to our narrative. So this same king, Priyavrata, when he was a young prince under the guidance of his guru Narad, he was continually engaged in practicing devotional service by remembering the Supreme Godhead, Sri Krishna. So he was very spiritually inclined, this king. Now we're back to that story. But his father, Swayambhuva Manu, who was the original Manu, who was born from Brahma, the creator. Remember, in the Vedas, God does not create personally. It is delegated to Brahma. There are different Brahmas in every universe. Every universe has its own Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And that Brahma in that universe is given the job of creating. So his son is Swayambhuva Manu. And Manu's son is the one we're talking about, Priyavrata. So when this boy was growing up, the young prince, his father, Swayambhuva, wanted him now to take over and rule the kingdom. But the boy did not want to, because he feared that he might be diverted from his spiritual path. At the same time, he could not reject the order of his father. Now there was a dilemma. And Brahma, the creator, this is the beginning of things before all the worlds are populated. So there's not that many people around. So Brahma decided to come in and intervene. And being the greatest being in the universe, and feeling great compassion for this child, he descended from his abode in Satyalok to instruct the young prince. Brahma said to him, "Do not be jealous of the Supreme Lord who is beyond our understanding. All of us, Shiva, your father, Narad, your guru, must carry out the orders of Vishnu. No living being can defy his orders by any means. We must therefore be guided by him exactly as a blind man is led by a person who has eyes to see. According to our consciousness and karma, all of us receive certain bodies and certain amounts of happiness and distress. All of us live with 6 co-wives. All of us have 6 co-wives. The 5 knowledge-acquiring senses and the mind. If you're a woman, you might say you have 6 co-husbands. Your 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, the eyes, ears, nose, mouth, tongue. 5 knowledge-acquiring senses and the mind. So these are your co-husbands or wives. So all of us have this. And he continues saying, even householder life cannot harm a self-satisfied, learned person who has conquered his senses. So householder life meaning family life cannot harm one who is self-satisfied, learned, and has conquered his senses. One who systematically conquers his mind and 5 senses is like a king in a fortress that has been and who has conquered his powerful enemies. He can move anywhere without danger. Hear this very carefully. He compares a person who has conquered his mind and 5 senses to be like a king, or if you're a woman, a queen, in a fortress where one has conquered their most powerful enemies and one can go anywhere without danger. Right? This is the secret to being able to live in the world but yet not be affected by the world. He says, "My dear prince, seek shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna and thus conquer your senses." So there's a correlation between this. Why would seeking the lotus feet of Krishna help you in conquering your senses? Krishna is called Govinda. Govinda, go means senses, and one who captivates the senses. When you are captivated by someone, let's say, for example, you fall in love with somebody, then no one else seems as attractive. That is the beauty of love. And that is the beauty of God. God is the supreme attractive being, the supreme lover. And when you fall in love with God, nothing in this world seems attractive anymore. Now your senses are only there to serve God. You have no interest in the stuff of the world. It comes naturally, it comes easily, it comes effortlessly. That is why Krishna presents himself to us. That is why he shows us his form and his pastime, so that we may become enamored, so we may fall in love. Because how can you fall in love with someone who you know nothing about? So Brahma continues, "My dear prince, seek shelter of the lotus feet of Krishna and thus conquer your senses. Then you may freely accept material enjoyment because you have been instructed to do this." His father has instructed him to do this. "You will remain free from material contamination." Prince Priyavrata then accepted his father's request. He became the king, engaged in worldly affairs while remembering the lotus feet of Krishna, which are the cause of liberation from all material attachment. He had 10 sons and a daughter, all of them equal in beauty, character, magnanimity, and other qualities to him. 3 of the sons became great saints and could directly perceive the Supreme Being in everyone's heart and realize that they were qualitatively no different than him. This is the realization, this is Paramatma realization, the realization that we are no different than God qualitatively. Big difference, please understand. Quantitatively, we are infinitesimal. In quantity, we are infinitesimal and God is infinite. We are like a drop of water from the ocean. God is the ocean. So in that sense, we have the same qualities as God at a soul level. In our purified soul, when there is no more mind and ego functioning, we are qualitatively no different than God. But quantitatively, absolutely different. Right? I hope that's very clear. So these three, were able to see and feel the presence of the Supreme Being or God in everyone's heart and realize that there was qualitatively no difference between themselves and Him. King Priyavrat ruled with unparalleled prowess to maintain the principles of Dharma. Principles of Dharma are what the whole Bhagavad Gita is about, the whole Vedic system is about. Dharma is there showing us the path to liberation. Ultimately, it leads to that. You start off by learning how to live in society in a way that keeps the senses under control. Today we live in a society where there is no regard for that. And therefore, how people behave, how people dress, what they do is all okay in the name of freedom. But freedom without any control, self-control I mean, is not freedom. It leads to bondage. What are we bound to? Our own senses, our own mind, our own desires, which now keep us running from pillar to post, from one place to another, to another, to another, which keep on chasing our desires, which keep on making us chase our senses. Our senses are dragging us like a horse being pulled or a dog being pulled on a leash. So we are not free. To be free is to be free from your mind, to be free from your senses, to be free from the influence of the world, whether something good happens or something bad happens, whether you get what you want or you don't get what you want. That is freedom. Freedom is not about just, oh, I'm free to say anything I want. It's not about free speech. It's not about free love. It's not about, free to do and be and have anything you feel like being. Be the best you can be. No, this is not freedom. This is bondage. To actually be able to tame the mind and the senses, one has to learn a great deal of discipline. One has to learn how to do difficult things. In the name of freedom, we've become lazy. We have now the freedom to smoke pot. We have the freedom to drink as much as we like. We have the freedom to engage in sex unrestrictedly. Yes, we have freedom, but it has made us lazy. What do I mean by that? I mean that our minds have become lazy. Now, to be stimulated, we need a drug. We need some substance. We need TV. We need something outside of ourselves. Entertainment. But a person who is truly happy, a person who is truly awakened, enlightened, finds the same happiness within, needs nothing from the outside world. Doesn't need a substance, doesn't need an entertainment, doesn't need anything. That is the standard we need to have. And that takes discipline. That takes training. Training because the mind has to be brought into your control. The senses have to be tamed. Now they will no longer distract you. Now they will no longer pull you here and there. So this king now, he greatly loved his wife, Barhishmati. And with the increase of days, their exchange of nuptial love also increased. Meaning, there was sexually tremendous chemistry and they were really into each other. By her feminine behavior, the way she dressed, walked, smiled, laughed, and glanced about, she increased his energy. And although he was a great soul, he appeared lost in love for her and behaved just like an ordinary man. With his great power, he changed the trajectory of the sun so that it moved to give equal light to all regions of the universe. He was a very powerful man. He was powerful as a king, and his spiritual power made it so that he could make amazing things happen in the universe. But his great love for his wife continued. Years passed. One day he began to consider how he had become entangled in material activities. He said, I've had enough. I'm not going to enjoy anymore. Just see how I have become a dancing monkey in the hands of my wife. He then divided all his earthly possessions amongst his sons, left his opulent kingdom, and renounced all attachment. Now, his son was named Agnidra. Agnidra, when he became king, he too observed the principles of dharma and protected the citizens as if they were his own children, just like his father had done. Agnidra, the son of King Priyavrat, desired to have a perfect son. Brahma understood his desire and sent the best of his apsaras, or dancing girls, Purvachitti, to the beautiful park where the king was meditating. The park was filled with dense green foliage, golden creepers, lotus ponds, and sweet singing of various kinds of birds. As Purvachitti walked, the sweet tinkling of her anklets and bangles brought the king out of his meditation. Her playful movements, her shyness and humility, her glances, the very pleasing sounds that poured from her mouth, and the motion of her limbs could attract the minds and hearts of both humans and demigods. Here's this king now, and he is in meditation, and he sees her. When she spoke, nectar seemed to flow from her mouth. As she breathed, the bees, mad for the taste of her breath, tried to hover around her beautiful lotus-like eyes. As she raised her feet to walk quickly away from the bees, her hair, the belt on her hips, and her breasts moved in a way that made her extremely beautiful and attractive. Indeed, she seemed to be making a path for the entrance of Cupid. The king knew the art of flattering women to win them to his side, and spoke to her as follows. "My dear friend, you have two very powerful arrows, namely your glancing eyes. Those arrows have feathers like petals of a lotus flower. Although they have no shafts, they are very beautiful, and they are very sharp, piercing points. They appear very peaceful, and thus it seems they will not be shot at anyone. You must be loitering in this forest to shoot those arrows at someone, but I cannot understand whom. My intelligence is dull, and I cannot combat you. Indeed, no one can equal you in prowess, and therefore I pray that your prowess will be for my good fortune." You see this way of talking. We don't talk like this anymore. I just go to someone and say hi. Then you got some cocky line to say or something like that. But he's got poetry, that he's espousing to her, praising her eyes, praising her appearance. He then praised her ankle bells, her waist, her hips, her breasts, her earrings, and the betel nut she was chewing. "What austerity have you undergone to achieve this beauty, my dear friend? I desire that you join me, for it may be that the creator of the universe, Brahma, being pleased with me, has sent you to become my wife. I do not want to give up your company, for my mind and eyes are fixed upon you and cannot be drawn away. O beautiful woman, I am your follower. You may take me wherever you like." In this way he pleased that celestial girl with his lusty words and gained her favor. Attracted by the king's intelligence, learning, youth, beauty, behavior, opulence, and magnanimity, Purvachitti lived with him for many thousands of years and luxuriously enjoyed both worldly and heavenly happiness. She gave birth to 9 sons, and after they grew up, she left and went back to Brahma. The king gave each of these sons a kingdom to rule. But his lusty desires were not at all satisfied, and he always thought about her. After his death, he went on to the same planet where she lived. What a love story, right? The eldest son, Nabhi, became king, and his wife, Meru Devi, gave birth to an incarnation of Vishnu called Rishabdev. Now, we'll be hearing about Rishabdev in the next chapters. He's a very important personality and had a lot that he taught. He's known to be similar to Mahavir and Buddha. So he was teaching a very interesting philosophy, and we'll be coming across him. So all of this was being told to us to lay the foundation for how Rishabdev was born. It's all got a purpose, but also to show us how easy it is to become attracted to someone who is beautiful, to someone who is perhaps the opposite sex or the same sex, if that's what you're into. But how easy it is, and how we lose our spirituality, how we spend our time and we spend our life in pursuing this person, in trying to please this person, in trying to love this person. And in the end, we never know where the outcome is. They may be with us for the rest of our life. They may join us on our spiritual path, or they may not. They may leave us, but ultimately one thing is true. One or the other of us will die and leave the other behind. So ultimately we will come back to being alone. And when you've been with someone all your life, it's very hard to be alone. The longer you've been with them, the more attached you are. And so often you'll see couples that have been together 50, 60 years. When one passes, the other within a year or two also leaves their body. That's because of attachment. That's because they have not cultivated being alone. Now, some of us have cultivated too much of being alone, and we've had too much of that so that we're so used to it, we don't know how to be in a relationship anymore. Because again, a relationship is a very challenging thing. A relationship causes you to have to accommodate another person's nature, their interests, their likes and dislikes. And if we've got very used to being by ourselves, it's very hard to accommodate that because we want everything a certain way. We're used to everything being a certain way. And now when somebody else comes in, that way is disrupted. It may not happen when you're first dating them or seeing them, but as you start living together, a lot of adapting and adjusting and accommodating needs to happen, which in today's world people are not ready to do. And so therefore it's been observed that in fact second marriages might last even less than the first ones did because people have a hard time. Then very often people just choose to be by themselves. And we're going through a lot of that now in today's time. We see a lot of people being alone, but very unhappy about being alone. So all of these stories are telling us that whether you get what your senses want or you don't get what your senses want, either way, what is more important than any of this is to cultivate your spiritual life. And your spiritual life is a journey only you can take. Only you can walk that path. No one can walk it for you or even with you. To some degree, yes, but not all the way. Ultimately, it is you that has to learn how to tame your mind and senses, because only when you do that can you go deeper into the real self. So how do you begin by taming the senses, for example? It begins by restricting yourself from certain things that might appear good to the senses. So for example, sugar is very attractive. I used to enjoy a lot of it and I've had to learn to curb it. It's not been easy. Likewise, for many people, alcohol can be very addictive and they might have a hard time not consuming alcohol. For others, meat and other such foods might seem very attractive and palatable. They might like the taste of it. But spiritual life says, no, curb your senses. Keep your food very simple, sattvic. Sattvic means that which promotes the mode of goodness, which promotes your spiritual life, which promotes peace. And meat and those kind of foods do not promote peace. They produce agitation in the body. The very suffering the animal had, the anxiety, the fear that that animal experienced will now be experienced by you. Therefore, it is not good for you to consume this because you are now inviting into your body more suffering than the world is anyway giving you. So, when people are attached, they're attached to these things and they don't want to give them up because of taste. What does taste mean? Sense enjoyment. So we have to get rid of the things that we necessarily appeal to our senses and simplify our life. Likewise, very spicy foods might be appealing to someone. Again, simplify, cut down on that. The Bhagavad Gita breaks down food into food that is tamasic or in the mode of ignorance, food that is in the mode of passion, and food that is in the mode of goodness. I've done a whole chapter on that in the segment on the Bhagavad Gita. You may want to look that up. But what's important here is to understand that we need to simplify our life to control our senses. Simplify the things that we have. Our possessions, simplify. Keep it simple. so that you're not chasing stuff. That is not the goal of life, to keep on acquiring more, to keep having more, to keep doing more. Yes, you need a home. Yes, you need a place to live. Yes, and keep it nice, but keep it simple. Same with your clothing, the same with everything else in your life. You don't have to aspire to get the most expensive car that is out there, or the most expensive, designer things. It's unnecessary. Keep it simple. In this way, train your senses to be satisfied with whatever you have. If you have more, be satisfied with that. If you have less, be satisfied with that. Because no matter how much you have, none of it is lasting. Be satisfied with whom you're with. Unless, of course, that person is extremely abusive and is extremely harmful to you. Other than that, be satisfied with whom you're with. We're not looking here to look for the love of our life. There is no such thing as the love of our life. Every time we meet someone, we think, oh, I've met the one. This is the love of my life. This is such a silly narrative. The love of our life is not a person. The love of our life can never be a person. Our soulmate. These are myths created by people. There is no such thing. Souls don't have mates. Okay? The soul is a spark of God. Its only mate, its ultimate mate is God. It comes from God, it belongs to God, and desires to return to God. That which you're looking for in your soulmate cannot be found with anyone. You may find pleasure, you may find happiness, you may find fun, you may find that you have a good life together. But if they were your soulmate, then they would always be with you, in your soul, with your soul, and they would go with you from one body to another. But then again, who would they be in that other body? How would you ever reconnect? So these are stories that have been made up by people. We want everlasting love. And yes, we deserve everlasting love. But that everlasting love is not with another soul. It is with the soul of all souls, the ultimate soul, the super soul, Paramatma, the great soul, God. That is the love affair that we're seeking, but we do not realize it. And so it's time for us to wake up and realize that this world, wonderful as it is, miraculous as it is, beautiful as it is not our home. Spirit is our home. And you can find that spirit right here, right now. But that what you find here will be an indicator of the spiritual world. That which you find in each other, the presence of the divine in each other, is an indicator of what it is like to be with God. You're getting a taste. Just like when you taste a drop of water from the ocean, you know, this is salty. Right? You taste a cheesecake. Oh, this is so sweet. Now you know. You know what the rest of the cheesecake tastes like because you've tasted a drop of it. In much the same way, you know what God is like when you connect with someone at a soul level. Yes, you can. That you can. What does that mean? It means you put aside your ego. People want to find a soulmate, but first you must find your soul. And then you must learn what it is to be able to connect with another person at a soul-to-soul level or soulfully. And what that means is really you have to learn how to drop your ego. You have to learn how to drop your defenses. You have to learn how to drop your ahankar, the thing, this is who I am. And be willing to let that be crushed and turn to nothing. Because only in nothingness will love survive. Because only when you're willing to be nothing will you learn how to love. That's very difficult to do. It cannot be done at the level of the ego. It has to be done at the level of the soul. In spirituality, that's the invitation. A relationship can help you in that way. It can help you because as you come across the difficulties of being in a relationship, you've got to peel away the layers of defensiveness, the layers of the soul, of the ego, the layers of all the stuff that you've constructed of who you think you are, until nothing remains except love. All right, let's take a look and see if you've got any questions and what you've been writing. I see a few questions out here. Let's take it up. All right. Celie writes, this gives me hope that spiritual progress is never lost, no matter how many distractions moved me away. Slowly I return in ways unexpected by noticing the grandeur in even the smallest of things. Wow, thank you. That which you are noticing, even in the smallest of things, Celie, that is the presence of God. God never left you. And you never left God. But you're waking back up again. And as you begin to notice more and more and more everywhere, all around you, that presence, you'll realize that God has always been with you, always will be with you, will never leave you, will never abandon you, will never forsake you. Human beings will. It's the very nature of human existence. We come together. Some have compared it to being like travelers who come at an inn or a hotel and meet each other there. They come for a day, they come for 2 days, a week, and then they go their own ways. And thus it is with every human that we come across. We are the ones who have the dream, oh, we're going to live happily ever after. Oh, it's not the way the world is. It's not the way it was designed. We were designed to come together for a short while and then be separated. That's how it is. That's how it always has been. There is no other possibility that we will be together forever. That does not exist. So we have to understand that very clearly. But on the other hand, God has been with you life after life, within your heart, next to your soul, sitting as your closest friend, your most intimate companion, listening to all of your stories, hearing all of your worries, all of your fears, being with you, never abandoning you, never leaving you. Understand the power of this love. And then has also been all around you, enveloping you with the air, with the sun, with the stars, with the moon, with the trees, all around you, surrounding you. In millions of ways, God has been with you. It is for us to open our eyes and see that which was ever present. That energy that was there all along was the energy of God. Scientists tell you there is an energy behind everything. Everything is made of energy. Well, what is that energy? That energy is God. If you slow down and experience it, you will notice how blissful it is. If you slow down and experience it, you will notice how peaceful and calming and enlivening and energizing that energy in the universe is. It's all around us. It's all in nature. It's not in these structures that we've built as human beings, but in its original state, even the rocks have that energy. The trees, the grass, the earth, the sky, they all have that energy. They're filled with it. Celie further writes, and the movements of all things within and without my body and thoughts, becoming aware when preparing a meal or cleaning, I relate to the matter between myself and the particles I interact with. I love that. Thank you. The movements of all things within and without my body and thoughts, becoming aware that even when preparing a meal or cleaning, I relate to the matter between myself and the particles I interact with. So these particles, you're so right, these particles you're interacting with, in all of them, if you will notice, if you will take the time to observe, God is present right here. Yes, as interacting with the Spirit in both. So, with this beautiful lesson in mind, I encourage all of you to take the time to slow down, to get out of your head, to be present to your body, to the world around you, even as you clean the dishes or the house, or even as you talk to somebody, or even as you're taking a shower, or even as you're eating your food. To slow down and experience without thoughts, just experience what you're doing. And in doing that, fully mindfully, fully attentively, fully present, you'll notice a certain energy, a certain feeling that comes about. Now, in most of these meditation practices, they won't tell you about that energy, but I'm here to give you that next step. That energy that you're experiencing, that is the energy emanating from Krishna. Just as the sunshine emanates from the sun, so also this energy emanates from God. And if you want to go further, then go further to find the source of this energy. And to do that, you can go and you can chant the names of Krishna. You can listen to these talks, go back and review these talks or any others. But you will find, wherever you find this feeling, chase it. Go like a hungry person. Go like someone who is in the desert, who is thirsty, who is hungry, who is greedy for this knowledge, for this wisdom. The idea is not that it touches your mind. The idea is that it touches your heart and it enlivens your soul. And if it does that, then you've come to the right place. Thank you. Thank you, Sili. Thank you, Swati. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, all of you who have been accompanying me on this journey. Deeply grateful to all of you who are here and all of you that are commenting even later on in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so grateful to you. It's been a long few years that we've been doing this, and it's been a very rewarding and beautiful journey. So thank you so much. Hare Krishna.